All right, we're going to be factoring these guys by a method called by grouping. And most factor by grouping problems you will see have 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4. So most of the time you could also factor out GCFs also if they all have a common factor, but most problems that have 4 terms we're gonna at least gonna try to factor by this method now called grouping, and this is how it works. What you do is you put groups of parentheses around the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms right there. Okay, so I have 6p minus 6q plus rp minus rq. And so what you do now is you factor each set of parentheses by the GCF method. So what is the GCF of 6p minus 6q? Well, it's 6, right? So I'm going to factor out a 6. So now I have p minus q left. 6 times p is 6p. 6 times negative q is negative 6q. Rp minus Rq, so they both have an R in common, and so now I have P minus Q. Now check this out here. Do you notice anything that both terms have in common? Is there a GCF now? And yes, they each have a P minus Q. So since each term has a P minus Q, I'm now going to factor out a P minus Q out of both of these terms. So I'm going to write P minus Q, and again, anytime that you factor out the GCF, you have to write another set of parentheses and say, okay, now what goes back inside? So P minus Q times what is 6 times P minus Q? Well, it would just be 6, because P minus Q times 6 is this right here. And then P minus Q times what is R times P minus Q? Well, that's just going to be plus R, because P minus Q times R is R times P minus Q. And that would be it. So notice the 2 things that we did here. We put parentheses here, and the first thing we did was we factored out the GCF out of each set of parentheses. And then you factor out the GCF of each term, which is P plus Q, and then what do we have left you put inside here, and that's what would be the final answer.